pretty excited to talk about our next topic. But before I do, I want to give a shout out and love on Daniel Santiago. He's one of our top guys over at adfreeshows.com, and he's been with us now for over 4 years. Greatly appreciate all of your support. Rounding the bases almost at 5 years now. Greatly appreciate you hanging out with us and supporting us really almost from the beginning, Daniel. But let's talk about some support that I threw to AAA last weekend. It was a big weekend for TKO. They set all kinds of records. I don't know if you saw this, but they had a $47 million gate over the weekend for their boxing efforts. It was really Dana White's first foray into boxing, and well, I think it did okay. $47 million. It set an attendance record at Allegiant Stadium, the brand new stadium where the Raiders play, and of course WrestleMania's host last year and this coming year. But all eyes in Las Vegas were on AAA and WWE. And there were some keen eyes that noticed, hey, wait a minute. That's not the same guy who's been portraying Mini Abismo Negro. That guy's got tattoos. This is a different guy. Wait a minute. Didn't we just see him at the old ECW arena working a show that was promoted by Tony Khan and an independent promoter? So did this guy just pull a Ravishing Rick Rudo? What's happening here? And that made me think, when we take a look back at Ravishing Rick Rude, back in 1997, we saw something pretty special, and I love the shot. If you're watching with us right now, you got to go check it out at 83weeks.com. There was a taped Raw that aired that night, and Rick Rude was in a full beard. So someone in the WCW camp thought, why don't we prove that we're live and have him go out there with different facial hair? Somehow, some way, this was able to be a thing that you were able to take advantage of. I say somehow, some way, because you really started this, and we talked about this a few weeks ago on the very first Nitro, where Luger shows up unexpectedly. Nobody imagined he would be there. And we know that when the NWO angle comes out, man, there's going to be lawsuits going back and forth in 1996 about what you could and couldn't do with trademark infringement for the Diesel and Razor characters. So you've been in the muck and the mire legally with WWE, but now they kind of just gave you a gift, because I think Rick Rude wasn't under a contract. How did that come to happen? Because I think when people saw it last week, obviously to a much smaller scale, they're like, hey, wait a minute. Wasn't he just, it's not exactly the same thing, but people drew the parallel. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about Rick Rude. How did it come to be, Eric?
You know, I'm not really sure what the WWE contract status was with Rick. The only thing I knew is he wasn't under contract, because that was the first question out of my mouth when Rick called me. But it goes back to the Screwjob, Montreal Screwjob. Mm-hmm. I was at home on a Sunday night, wasn't watching the pay-per-view. I was just with my wife and my kids, typical Sunday night, about 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever time it was. And that was back when I had a hard line, you know, in my house, had a regular phone, which I haven't had in years. But the phone rang, and it was Rick Rude. And Rick had witnessed the Vince McMahon, Bret Hart confrontation. I don't know if he saw the punch, if he was in the room or it was outside the room, but clearly Rick knew everything that went down and had a very strong opinion about it. He was livid at Vince. He was livid at the situation. I'm sure he didn't have a lot of details. He didn't know the nuance, but nonetheless, Rick was pissed. And he called me up, and he was the first person to explain to me what happened. Because again, you know, I wasn't paying attention to the internet. I didn't have this damn thing back then, right? I'm just watching TV. And Rick called me and gave me pretty much a blow by blow in terms of overall what happened, his perspective at least. And he said, man, is any shot I can come back to WCW, because I don't want to be here? And I said, Rick, you know, what's your contractual status? Don't have one. Come on down. Bring a razor. I didn't say that, but said absolutely. If you don't have it, because I've known Rick for a long time. Rick and I were friends for quite a while. I knew of Rick back before I ever got into the professional wrestling business. We had a lot of mutual friends and hung out in some of the same bars, so to speak. So I knew of Rick. And then when I got to WCW in 91, Rick and I kind of immediately connected because he's a Minnesota guy. We're just mutual friends, right? We had a lot in common. So we started hanging out. I'd drive to towns, occasionally with Rick. We'd share rides and stuff. So when Rick called me and said, hey, told me what happened, didn't want to be there, asked if there was a spot, kind of like I did with Medusa. She went through the same thing, different circumstance, but same thing. She called and said, hey, any room? Sure, we'll make room. Come on down, we'll figure it out. And the same thing happened with Rick. Although with Rick, I immediately was just like Dr. Evil. How do I want to use this? I wanted to stick it up Vince's ass as hard and fast as I could. So the whole thing was really it was just as much about pissing off Vince and getting under his skin, because I really believed at the time that if I could get him off his game, I knew he was competitive. I knew he had a big ego. When I say I knew, I had been led to believe that by people that did know Vince very well, who have kind of consistently all said the same thing at different times in different conversations. So you got to get a sense of what you're dealing with, even though I didn't know Vince personally. So I thought, all right, if he's got a big ego, if he gets pissed off easy, I'm going to keep him off his game by keeping him pissed off. So that whole thing with Rick and me kind of back there with the shit-eating grin on my face, that was all intentional. And it was really designed more to piss off Vince McMahon than it was to entertain the audience, to be honest.
I got to ask, when you said he called you, did he just call the office? Does he have?
No, he called my house.
Okay. And do you think he got that number from Paige, or did he just have it from years before?
No, I think he had it. Because like I said, we'd ride together occasionally if we were going to TV, like Macon, Georgia, for example, if TV was in Macon, or if it was in, somewhere that was like a 2 or 3 hour drive, which happened a lot. Occasionally Rick and I would connect and we'd drive together. So he would have had it from that exchange.
I don't know that you knew this, but I think as the story goes, he was on a per appearance deal. So that's the reason he was able to just show up somewhere else. You guys didn't discuss his financial opportunity in WCW over the phone, though. You just knew we'll get together and figure it out face to face.
Yep.
Yeah. It's fascinating, man, to just think about what a major moment that was in wrestling history. And I know that wrestling fans were really caught up in that, certainly the quote unquote smart fans. But did anyone in the Turner organization realize what you had pulled off here? Were there any attaboys on that, or was that not really something they kept up with?
It's one of the things that was disappointing during my time with Turner. And it certainly changed around 97 and 98. But for the longest time, other executives within the company, you kind of knew that they wished you weren't there. Like you felt like the guy that got invited to the party because someone felt like they had to invite you, but nobody at the party was really happy to see you there. That's pretty much how all of us at WCW felt anytime we were in the CNN Center. Because generally across the board, we were that, it's those wrestling people. Ugh. That was the vibe. People wouldn't say it that way, but that was the vibe. So no, I didn't hear from anybody, but nobody watched the show. Nobody within Turner really gave a shit. They didn't watch the product. I made a point of that when I sat down in 1998 with a whole room full of people that were there to tell me how I should run my business, but none of them ever watched it. Didn't know anything about it. Had no idea how WCW went from where it was to from where it was when I took it over to where it was the day of whatever it was in July of 1998. No clue how it got there. No understanding of the wrestling business whatsoever. No interest in even trying to understand it fundamentally. So no, we didn't hear from anybody.
I do want to ask, we know of a few guys, Lex Luger, Rick Rude, who were really able to show up as a surprise on the other channel. But did that ever happen the other direction? I don't remember there being a story where someone shows up on Monday Night Raw and you were caught on your heels.
Nope.
Why do you think that is?
Because I wasn't sloppy. Sorry, that was a shot. No, look, was it sloppy to have a guy on your television show that was on a nightly deal? Not really. At the time, let's be real, Rick couldn't wrestle because of his Lloyd's of London issue. So he was relegated to a manager type of position, a role, right? He wasn't going to get in the ring and take any bumps. So was there any need on WWE's part to put him under a traditional talent contract? Probably not, especially if things were tight financially, which at that period in time, we all know WWE was real close to calling it a day financially.
That's the reason the screw job happened. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah. So it wasn't like finances weren't an issue,
right,
with regard to keeping guys under contract. So the fact that Rick really wasn't a wrestler and they were really tight financially, it makes sense that he'd be on a nightly deal. I didn't like people on nightly deals on my television unless they were enhancement talent, for example, for a lot of other reasons, many legal ones. So that was their choice, and we took advantage of it. You won't find it now. I doubt that they've got anybody that showed. I mean, I was just at WWE last week doing something for A&E, and I'm signing, releases and documentation, and they've certainly, the business has changed, but the conditions have changed.
It's interesting because I do think in 2020, Rey Mysterio was on TV without a contract for WWE. And in 2022, we know that allegedly Moxley's contract expired and he was the interim world champion and technically working without a contract.
For WWE?
No, for AEW.
Oh.
Okay. I love you for that. Just, I don't know if you're watching on video, but every now and again, you should be watching on video. SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama, what could they help me with? But I'm out here in California and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
That's number 212, non-equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.